had I not tried it again, I wouldn't have known about those mechanics at all, which is really interesting. I wouldn't know that that's how it works.
Right, which is something I feel like you should say at the beginning. Be like, hey, the worlds are randomly generated.
Microsoft, do not try to promote Game Pass over the next 10 years by saying, you can play Redfall. I don't think that's why people are going to come to play
You know, I actually don't have Game Pass, but now that you mention Redfall's on it, so here's my question. If it doesn't like fire and blood, how do you use fire with blood? You just burn the blood samples?
What happened is that they had the blood on the petri dish, and they put a torch near it, and if it exploded because it reacted badly to the thing, you knew that the alien was in it. Alex, the leaves are falling off the trees one by one, right onto my face.
I think that you should probably not be sitting underneath trees. Last time someone did that, an apple fell on their head, allegedly.
Yeah, and then we discovered gravity.
And then someone got a concussion and said that gravity was the thing.
Yeah,
also,
gravity was evil. Yeah.
At the time of recording this, happy Friday the 13th, everyone.
If you survived Friday the 13th, congratulations. Just happened to come in October. That's kind of fun. For
Perfect.
No one. If you were in one of those movies and you survived through it, congratulations, you're in the minority. Welcome to the spook-tacular season of October on Total Pebble Knockdown. I am Nathan.
And I am Alex.
And this is Total Spooky Knockdown. I don't know what we're doing for a tagline.
Total Pumpkin Carving. With a K.
With a K. Perfect. Total pumpkin carving, everybody. Enjoy. So first up on the show is a question that we got from Dadam a while back that I've just been putting on the back burner, and I wanted to address it now. In the vein of games that we thought that we would like, but really didn't, which was a question that he had asked before, he also asked the reverse, which is games that we thought we would hate that we ended up really liking. And I had two examples that I wanted to give that really, just at the forefront of my mind, are definitely that. The first one is one game that I think everybody is going to be familiar with, which is Vampire Survivors. Because when I first heard about it, I was like, oh, okay. It's like, it's almost like a tower defense game. But
sure,
but like it's I guess a roguelike almost. I didn't even know what to make of the game when I first heard about it. I saw screenshots, I saw some clips of it, and I was like, oh, a lot of people are talking about this, but I really don't think it's going to be for me.
Right, it's kind of, I feel like it's more like a bullet hell type of game.
Yeah, and I don't usually like those. I don't
like it, but it's like a reverse bullet hell. You're the bullets.
Yeah, you're the bullet that everybody else is trying to avoid you, for the most part. Yeah. There is also some aspects where they're shooting at you. But then I played it, and the first couple runs that you go through, you're like, oh, okay, I'm trying to get the mechanics down of I don't actually fire anything. The game automatically fires stuff for you on an interval. But then you collect a few gems and you level up, and then they start giving you options as to like what other weapons you want to collect or if you want to upgrade them and stuff. And you know, all of a sudden I was like, oh, that's kind of neat. Okay, so now I have these and they interact in different ways and they function differently. Okay, I'll grab some of those. After a couple of those, runs, I started wondering if it was something I wanted to keep playing with, but it was just interesting enough, where I was like, I'll do another run. Like, I'll do another run. I'll do another
just one
run.
more.
One more. One more run. It's okay. And then, like, the folks that developed this game are evil geniuses. Because
it is this one person, honestly.
It is. And he came from a background, what was it, like the gambling machines. Like, he was from a background of, like, knowing how those gameplay loops work for gambling mechanics. But he used it not to create, predatory DLC, but as mechanics in the game where, you get a chest and you open the chest and it randomly like spirals around and gives you an item that you didn't have before. It gives you an ability you didn't have before. Or starts to fuse them, because then you start to realize there's certain fusions where if you have this active ability and you have this passive ability and you've leveled them up, then it might be that the chest gives you a fusion of the two and makes it way, way better. And so, like, now I don't just have my garlic, but I now have, like, a dark void around me that sucks the life force from all of my enemies into me. And so that's super cool. And then what other abilities work with that? Oh, well, here's one that it affects my range of any area affectability, and these are ones that increase the rate at which you fire them off, and before you know it, you have this just gigantic screen-expanding dark void of life-sucking energy if you get to those. So once you get up to the point where you can actually do like a 30-minute run and really like go through all of that, you're like, oh wow, that was pretty cool. And it's right around that time they say, hey, you've unlocked a new map you can go to, and oh, there's some other characters you've unlocked. Would you like to get those? And here's some new abilities. And they just keep feeding you like this constant satisfying loop of new things that they keep introducing over and over and over again. And you keep sitting there kind of going, oh, I got a bad rap on that last run. I bet I could do better the next one. And so you go back in because you're like, oh, if I just get the right confluence of circumstances, I'm gonna totally get through this. And they do the smart thing of, like, after doing all of that, they then like surprise you with new things, where it's like, oh, you get to the special map where you can outrun death. Like, you can outrun the death, and you go to, and it warps you to this whole other area that has like a special cutscene at the end that unlocks a whole other thing. They do it's just a really smart way that the developers made that game, where it's just constantly surprising you with the new abilities and weaponry and characters that you get, and how you can continuously upgrade them. And so, after, I don't even know how many hours I had in it, sometimes I still keep thinking to myself, maybe I should go play Vampire Survivors.
There you go. See, it's gotten in your head now.
It's gotten in my head, yeah. And it helps that it has like a really nice style for what it is, and that it has like some pretty cool music that's fit. It felt like Castlevania, but if Castlevania was a bullet hell shooter.
Yeah.
And so I did like it for that reason. Now, you never played Vampire Survivors.
I have not. It's sitting on my wish list. Not that it's a lot of money, just like eventually I'll try it out. It's one of those games that, same with you, I've looked at it and gone like, okay. This isn't like a typical game I would play, but I know by looking at it and playing games like Dungreed.
Oh, okay.
However you say that name.
Yeah.
Playing that, which is just has the roguelite elements to it, where you can restart, do more runs, and you get different items. There's hundreds of item combinations to do and sets you can unlock. And from doing that, I feel like it'll be the same thing. Or like Curse of the Dead Gods,
Sure.
It's those roguelite games really get you.
Oh, they can, yeah.
They can really get you. So I know if I play it, I'm probably going to be like, this is okay. And then I'll sink like 6 hours into it, and I'll be like,
damn.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's one of those. I can play a game for 30 minutes and go, this game sucks, I'm never going to play it again. But I can play a game that I feel is like mediocre, that I'll be like, this game is kind of, it's alright, I guess. There's nothing wrong with it. And then end up playing 10 hours and it going, oh, I guess I was enjoying myself because I got sucked in.
Yeah, exactly. And I even think that their timers, where there's time limits and such that you're trying to get to, was really smart, because if you wanted to play and you're like, oh, I might have a half hour, you start playing it, and then maybe you die at the 15-minute mark, and then you're like, oh, I still have 15 minutes, I could try that again, but then you're a half hour in, and you succeed, and now you're past the time you thought you were going to play. It's very smart the way they do it. I have not played the DLC. I do know that they did some small DLC packs, but I'm sure it's good. I know that they probably wanted to keep making a little bit of money on the back end, because it's a risk. They don't sell it for a lot of money, so it's $5.
You don't have to sell it for a lot, though, too.
Yeah.
Like, it still, how many copies has that sold? Lots.
Yeah, tens of millions, I think. I don't even know how many. But, and everybody liked it. And it did help that it was on Game Pass. A lot of people played it that way. But, I mean, I think even on Steam sales, they did pretty well.
Oh, yeah. No doubt.
So, I mean, there was that one. It was definitely a surprise. Sometimes I just do a thing where I will play a game that I have, like, no expectations of, just to see what it does. And you know, that's something I do enjoy doing, because it's like, oh, this is completely outside of my wheelhouse. I don't know if I'm going to like this or not, but let's find out if it does anything interesting, and sometimes I get surprised by it. It's not all the time, but sometimes I do. The other game, though, that I was going to play was one that I kind of had to give a second pass to. And I've talked about it on the show before, but Remnant from the Ashes is a game that is in, like, the Dark Souls sort of family in terms of its framework. You know, you have regenerating enemies and checkpoints, and it focuses on strategic combat more than anything else. You have a version of the Estus Flask, I think they're the Dragon Hearts in this one, that only regenerate when you get to one of those. You have hub areas, and you can trade in the one currency for, you know, upgrades to your character, etc. The thing that made it a little different was that they used guns. And I started thinking that, you know, well, actually shooting mechanics into one of those games could be really interesting, if that was a focal point. But the first time I played it, I really, really did not like it, at all. I was not happy with the way that the enemies acted. I didn't like how clunky and slow it felt that I was. And when I got to the first, like, major boss of the first area, it just steamrolled over me multiple times, right when I thought that I was doing something, like, I might be able to get through it, and it just steamrolled over me and, like, destroyed half my health, started sending out little plague spore monsters at me, and I'm like, okay, you know what, after 4 or 5 attempts at that, I was like, yeah, not doing this anymore. But I did that on console. Eventually it was I think it was on Epic. It was free on Epic. And I said, okay, well, you know what, I'll try it on PC, and I'll try it again, and I'll make a new character, and I'll shoot my shot again, because it feels like it could have been good. It feels like it could be good.
Games that feel like they could have been good.
There's a lot of games that feel like they could be good in the right circumstances, and maybe I wasn't in the right circumstances. And Gunfire Games, who are the developers of that, had some really good titles. They also made the Darksiders series. So they and I think at that point they had already made Darksiders 3, which actually had Souls-like elements in it too. And I played that, and I thought that was really good. So I was like, well, let me give it a second try. I'll give it a second try. And what I found was really interesting is that something I did not know when I originally went into the game was that there is randomized elements every time you go through a playthrough. So the individual maps will change and have different configurations as to where one area leads to the next. And that there is even different end bosses that you might encounter on different seeds, essentially. So that you lock in a world, but then if you wanted to, you can recombine the world eventually and run through it in a new way so that you can fight different kinds of bosses. So, so I get to the boss area, and I'm like, oh boy, here we go with the big juggernaut dude that's going to plow over me in 5 seconds. And it's not. It's a completely different boss. And I get through that boss in a few attempts, and it feels more manageable. And I say, oh, I got through.
I feel like that's really interesting as a concept for like a Souls-like.
Yeah.
But not necessarily in a good way. Like then it comes down to like what you randomly roll for your world. So
right.
like for a casual player, someone like me or someone like you, that's like as you said, you didn't like it. You stopped playing the game at that point because it just felt unfair, pretty much.
Yeah.
And it's like I would have never tried it again.
Right.
Probably.
Right. And
like, well,
had I not tried it again, I wouldn't have known about those mechanics at all, which is really interesting. I wouldn't know that that's how it works.
Right, which is something I feel like you should say at the beginning. Be like, hey, the worlds are randomly generated.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that it should be more clear that that's a thing that happens. Because it's not made explicit at the outset. There's like this giant world crystal that's in the main camp that you eventually have access to, where you can start to reseed, and I think it especially becomes useful after you do the main quest, because it will ask you about difficulty levels and stuff like that when you go back in. So that you might have access to different parts, because also different bosses, different enemies have parts and components and stuff that you might need for upgrades and stuff. But I got through that boss, and then I get to the next area. And by this time, I'm like, oh, okay, I see what kind of weaponry works for me and what kind of armor works for me. And it gave me enough space where I could see that the mechanics actually will work okay if you understand how it works in the game. As long as you understand how the game functions, then you can tailor it to your style, you know? And I realized that it was probably, one, I wasn't playing the class that worked for me. I did a different class the second time through. And that I was reaching stumbling blocks that aren't necessarily there, depending on what generates in the world and the outset. And, you know, it's interesting because it's kind of a little bit of a roguelike thing that they put into a Souls-like game by having
it's a little weird.
Having that. But I think that they might have done that for replayability. Because when you go back through, you may encounter completely different enemies than the ones that you previously had to deal with.
I feel like that's more of a new game plus type deal thing you should do.
Yeah.
Instead of from the outset, because I know like Devil May Cry, for instance, after you beat the game on normal, you unlock a couple different more difficulty options.
Sure.
And then you can beat it on harder modes and unlock more difficulty options.
Sure.
But one of them, like the first one, is just, it's the same game, and you go through it, but the difficulty mode swaps where all the enemies are in the game. So, like, if you start the game, you might have, like, a boss-type monster in the first room. I mean, in that one, you keep all your progress when you do that as well, so you're still on an upgraded character, which is nice. But it's like, enemies are not where you expect them to be. So you go into a room that you expect these easy enemies, and it might be aerial-only enemies or something really difficult. So it's not like the base game doesn't go, yeah, we're just going to do this for that. It's not the experience they want. But to make it more of a challenge, they have a mode that specifically does it.
Sure.
So maybe if they had done it more as a New Game Plus type deal, or at the Crystal where you can reshuffle things, but not like as the like intro experience to it. Yeah,
I getcha. The first little tutorial part is pretty much set in stone. But it's really when you get into the main game where you start to realize that, actually, when I go through this door, I don't know what the next map is that I'm going to link to from this door. And like, I don't know where the entrances to the sewers, for instance, are. that all keeps changing on you through a variety of different maps that they put into place. Almost like a tile laying game, where you kind of like know what the tiles are, but you don't know in what configuration that they're in and which ones you're going to even encounter. Because they're even behind the bosses, there would be like special areas that you may not encounter depending on how that world was shuffled around. So interesting thought for how they developed that game. It's just that it kind of takes a couple tries for you to understand what they're doing. I have not tried Remnant 2. I have heard very good things about it. I don't know if they kept that mechanic or not.
No idea.
No idea. But if they did, at least I'd be aware of it. I can tell you that I did try, what was it, Chronos Before the Ashes, which was like the kind of the prequel to Remnant, but was also, I think it was like a VR or it was a mobile game that came out before Remnant, and then they turned it into, after Remnant did well, they turned Chronos into like an actual computer game that wasn't those other things that didn't work.
Sure.
But that is a much more direct Dark Souls sort of thing, which is like melee combat and set structure to the world that you go through, and fantasy elements more than sci-fi, and works okay. The one interesting thing that they did though is that every time you die, you age a year.
Okay.
In that, which does eventually affect what your maximum strength and dexterity are, but also increases like your wisdom stats, so you can get better at magic later if you die enough. But you don't have the ability to wield as strong a weapon and do as much melee combat. So they did an interesting thing there. I guess Sifu kind of did something similar to that. But I don't know. Remnant though, I really like, because once you really get into it and start to like get used to the mechanics and the enemies and get comfortable with your weaponry, it becomes actually fun to start going through those levels and going, oh, okay, now I know what I'm going to encounter, and it's once you get good, essentially, you're
good.
Once you get good, you're in good shape, and by the time you get to the end, and you really just start to appreciate that the shooting mechanics work for this framing, you're happy to finish the game. I did finish the game, and went through with some other options to check out what the other enemies were. If I hadn't forced myself to go back and try it again, I wouldn't have known that.
Yeah.
Realistically.
See, I don't usually do that. I go, wow, this game really wasn't good. Unless there's updates, I'm not going to go back and go, but I should try that again, typically.
Right.
Once in a while, but...
Yeah. I kind of decided that, we'll talk about it during the New Year's episode, but I've kind of decided that this coming year, I want to do, like, second chances for a lot of games that I didn't like to begin with, but I always felt like maybe under the right circumstances I would, and like really sit down and say, okay, we're gonna try this one more time and see if I can actually go through, like, can I actually find the value in this, because it's been nagging me that I can't.
Sounds like we've got a new series on our hands. Second Chances with Nathan.
Yeah, it might,
or something.
It might be in Titanium Mine, but it's like a mini series for Titanium Mine, as like a Second Chances series. There's some games I can think of that are probably going to be on there. I'll see how in love I am with that idea.
Yeah, honestly, one thing I've thought about recently just a little bit was maybe, like, I was talking with Crave about it, is what if I try some games that I don't think I like, or like I don't think I'll like, but try to find something in them I do like.
Yeah.
The only issue with that is that I have to go out and find games I don't think I'll like, which is hard because there's a lot of games I don't think I'll like, but finding games I don't think I like but I'll want to try to play that are at a price point I'm willing to pay for a game I don't think I like.
You know what you do is you go through Epic.
Yeah,
Right, and you start looking through Epic, because I guarantee you that there's stuff that you got for free on Epic or one of the other services that you probably didn't think you'd ever want to play, but you picked them up anyway.
Yeah, that's probably where I'd start with that.
Those are a couple examples. If anyone out there has some games that you'd like to share that you hated, I'm not going to judge you, even if it was like a great game and you say I hated it, but then I got a little bit happier with it, or if I don't like it, I'm not going to judge you. Everybody has preferences on what games
Nathan's
they like.
going to judge you really severely.
I'm going to judge you, but it's going to be silent judgment behind the scenes. I'm going to be very passive-aggressive in my judgment of you.
Perfect.
So, get ready for that. Alex, we always hate to do this, but we do have a little newsy segment.
It depends on the news. Sometimes it's boring but interesting. Sometimes it's interesting and laughable.
Sometimes it is interesting and laughable, and this just happened to be something that we saw a week or two ago that I think is relatively prescient, especially for the time of year that we're in.
Yeah.
And the fact that I have a little experience with the game. But it has to do with a little thing called Redfall. You familiar with this?
I heard it was a really great game on launch.
It is Game of the Year. It's Game of the Year territory.
Beating out Baldur's Gate 3.
Baldur's Gate 3 has nothing on Redfall. Yeah. All of these great games that came out this year don't hold a candle to Redfall. Intriguingly enough, for our live show, I also played Prey, which is from the same company. This is also a game from
Arcane.
Arcane, thank you. I for a second there, I was like, wait, what is the company? Yeah.
Who am I talking about?
Who am I talking about? Arcane. Redfall wiped the memory of Arcane out of my head. But anyway, we played a little bit of Prey, which was a good game that Arcane made. And now we're talking about Redfall, because we were joking before. Redfall is not good. I have played enough of it to tell you that it is only fun if you consider it like a B-movie camp, sort of, so bad it's good, but even then it's a little bit boring. So at any rate, there's the review of Redfall. The point is, that's not what we wanted to talk about. We wanted to talk about an article that actually came up, was presented to us from Forbes. Ahem. The headline reads, Redfall, with 3 concurrent Steam players, is still selling its DLC pack. From Paul Tassi. After Redfall was released earlier this year, I maintained that it was the single worst AAA release I had played in years. That's Paul Tassi's opinion. I still think it's brilliant. Possibly in several console generations. Some said that was too extreme, and yet later in the year here, it seems it did not quite find its audience, to say the least. It now has anywhere from a low of 3 to a peak of 38 players playing the game on Steam at any given time.
38 players is peak numbers.
Yes. No zeros are missing there. 3 players. They even show a helpful little screenshot to actually show the dip. It looks like as of October 1st, that's when it hit 3 specifically.
I had also just recently heard something from Bellular News as well, that Redfall's player numbers had gone up like 210%, and it was an anecdote because their player numbers are so bad.
Yeah, 210%, so we went from 3 players to 10 players, basically.
Yeah.
Perfect. Great. So anyway, later on in the article, it says, as recently as September, Pete Hines, kind of a big deal over at Microsoft, talked about how they weren't giving up on Redfall because long-term, it will always be on Game Pass, even if it launched poorly. Yes, we're fully aware. He said, We're going to get it to be a good game because we know, as a first-party studio, Game Pass lives forever. There will be people 10 years from now who are going to join Game Pass, and Redfall will be there.
And they will not want to play it in 10 years. People will go, what the fuck is Redfall?
Yeah. And also, just for the record, this is my commentary. Microsoft, do not try to promote Game Pass over the next 10 years by saying, you can play Redfall. I don't think that's why people are going to come to play Game Pass.
I actually don't have Game Pass, but now that you mention Redfall's on it...
Oh, you gotta do it. Paul Tossi's article does say, just to kind of expand on this, but Arcane's Redfall has been all but abandoned. Its last update was in June 2023, a month after its release.
So one of the things I had heard while I was listening to the Bellular thing, because I enjoy the news they do, they haven't fixed, anything.
Yeah, nothing of substance added in the 4 months since, and no, that 60 FPS update, which seemed like it was coming soon after launch, apparently never happened either, so... Hello, folks. An update. Since this article was put out, Redfall, out of nowhere it seems, actually did have a game update, where they touted that they would have performance mode for Xbox Series XS, added PC performance and stability improvements, and a lot of changes, including controller improvements, stealth takedowns, new encounters, although when they say new encounters, that doesn't necessarily mean new enemies, just that there's new encounters with the existing enemies. Anyway, Paul Tossi actually did do another article as a follow-up where he returned to Redfall following this update, and I'll link that article down below, but just know that the last line of the article is, "The update improves Redfall in small ways, not in big ones. The game isn't fixed, or much better than it was. Sorry to report that, but it's just the way it is." So... anyway, enjoy the rest of the video. Past that, Bethesda's bigger problem is that as part of the Game Pass way to make more money with free games that launch there, free in quotation marks, there was a Bite Back edition, also in quotes, which came with some cosmetics, but the main draw was the promise of 2 more new characters to join the original 4. That pack is still on sale to this day, $30 by itself, or bundled at $100. I should mention too, if you have a concurrent player base of 3, Redfall's also built more as a multiplayer game than as a single-player game, and I think that they kind of build it so that you can have 4 players in a match at a time. So what
you can't even 3 concurrent players are all together,
and they can't even get a 4-person team together if they're at that low point. So I really hope they can keep at least 4 concurrent players so that they have 1 match going on online, assuming all of them want to actually play multiplayer, which I don't know if I'd want to subject my friends or even strangers.
I don't know. Maybe if it wasn't a $70 title.
Yeah, exactly. Or $100 for your complete collection that doesn't actually have the characters in it that you might have thought for the Bite Back edition.
Okay, so maybe if I had Game Pass, I would go, hey, who wants to get together and play some Redfall for the lulz?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the only thing I can say is if they were smart, and I don't know if they're smart, but I would start promoting Redfall as the kind of thing that streamers will get so much content out of because it is so bad. Like promote it to streamers and say your audience is going to love watching you absolutely lose your damn mind playing Redfall, and just promote it like it's The Room but for video games. Just promote it that way. It might become a cult classic for just the absolute shit show that it became. Try that. It's the most you can do. Sure, I guess it's possible Arcane does indeed somehow get all this stuff out eventually, but that seems like a colossal waste of time. Reportedly, Arcane is now pivoting back to Dishonored 3, probably the smartest move for them, and it does not seem smart to devote any more attention to Redfall, Broken Promises, or no. So Arcane's apparently going back to the well and saying, oh yeah, you know one of those series people liked, we're just gonna make a sequel to that. Because recently, like, Redfall was universally panned, but they were even kind of like on the fence when it was Deathloop, which was another one of their original IPs, and I didn't like it, and I like Arcane. So I understand that they're probably going back to the well. As much as I like to see original IPs, it seems like, especially in recent incarnations, it hasn't been working out very well for that studio.
Oh, I don't think Bethesda in general has been doing great with the original IPs right now.
No, and it's kind of sad, because we had this almost optimistic pie-in-the-sky idea that maybe when Bethesda was acquired by Microsoft, they would be able to take, Bethesda Studios and also their other studios, and take a little bit more time to actually polish their games and build the kind of games they wanted to make. By and large, that doesn't seem to be happening.
Since Microsoft owns all this, given that they are now acquiring Activision Blizzard King, who knows what we'll see with that? Not that we think Blizzard is coming out with any new IPs anytime soon.
No, I don't think Activision is going to do that either. I have a feeling that they're going to just be playing their hits for as long as they possibly can.
Sure. On the bright side, at least with Blizzard currently, they have put the manpower into their games. I think their teams of Diablo and their teams on Warcraft, for instance, are like 600 or 700 people each.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, they've bulked up huge numbers of people to work on these games, which is great for getting stuff done. But also, like World of Warcraft, they've got basically new leadership and roles that are going in forward to do newer stuff. They have Tris Metzen's back, like, in a leadership role, and he was the OG, like, up until like probably Warlords of Draenor. I think he was like really big, and then he took a break.
Sure.
He was like he burnt out. He was like on the team for Diablo and Warcraft and Starcraft. He's the voice of Thrall in Varian Wrynn, who's no longer with us, God rest his soul. But like, he's back in a leadership position there, so like going forward, Warcraft is hopefully going to feel more Warcrafty. But that's not what this is about.
I'm getting a little bit annoyed by the fact that game studios can't just take the L and say, yeah, this sucked. Sorry. Like, we'll do better in the future. They keep trying to salvage. They keep trying to polish the turds, and sometimes when they're really committed to actually doing a good job, or if there's something to salvage, then they can do something. Like famous cases like No Man's Sky, but they actually took years and years, and they actually wanted to deliver on the promises that they had made at the beginning. Cyberpunk, released in a pretty poor state, and then CD Projekt Red went back and went, oh no, and we wanted this to be such a good thing, and went back and over the course of years really expanded upon it, made it better, have done a lot with the AI overhaul. But it's different between that and when you have a project like Redfall, where I don't see what a good version of this game would have even been. I don't know what it would have achieved. It's not even stylistically or interesting enough to be Borderlands the way that they framed it. Like even from out of the gate, it's like, imagine if Borderlands, but one, we don't have an interesting visual style. Two, we don't really have nearly as many interesting guns that interact with, the world.
That's fair.
Because we have just like 5 or 6 different kinds of guns, essentially, that have different legendary versions, different color-coded scales. And imagine if we have, like, essentially 3 enemies. Like, there's 3 enemy types. I don't know what a good version of Redfall would ever be, and so I can't really suggest that it's worth taking any more time. It's similar to, you know what it actually reminds me a lot more of? Anthem. It reminds me of Anthem, because I've played Anthem. And that has the same thing. It wanted to do, like, the color-coded loot system, and it came out, and it felt kind of bland. It had some ideas in it. It came from an acclaimed studio, that was BioWare, and they kept saying over and over again, like, we're going to, oh yeah, the storm is coming, you know, and there's a cataclysm or whatever, and we're gonna create these weather effects and stuff. But no one cared by that point. And
yeah,
we had
too little, too late.
Yeah, we had already seen what the story was and the characters, and we were like, meh, I don't know what this even would be. And again, I don't know what a good version of that game would be, even if you fix those basic problems, because it's not very engaging, and we came here for thinking BioWare, you're gonna create this great epic story and big fleshed out worlds, and it's not that, and no amount of fixing it, unless you make a new game entirely, is going to do that. The coolest thing that they did with that game was they gave you, like, the Iron Man suit, and you can fly around for a little while before you run out of thrust, and then you have to wait for it to recharge. That was the coolest thing that it did, but it doesn't make the whole game work. You can't build your entire game around that one thing.
Yeah, maybe use the game as, like, a framework for something else that is not what it is now, but, like...
Yeah. Do, you know, or just accept that it's not good and nobody wants to play it, and then just ham it up. Like, say you're gonna do an event with Redfall, and, like, all the vampires, like, have clown noses. It's Clownageddon, and just make all of the weapons, like, do, like, horn honking noises for a little while. Just do some random, stupid, absolutely insane crap with it, just to make it, like, something. Like, just to revel in the fact that it wasn't very good, and just to play around with it at that point. Like,
right.
Some kind of just stupid event that makes no sense whatsoever. Do horse armor, but it's not paid horse armor. You just put horse armor in the game. There's no horses. There's just horse armor. You put the horse armor. You put the horse armor on the cars that you can't drive in the game. That was one of the things that people really did complain about, and I understand, is that there's tons of cars in the game. You cannot drive any of them.
It's pointless.
Yeah.
Anyways, enough. I feel like that's enough bitching about Redfall for one day.
No one's interested in this vampire story. And I don't blame them.
Maybe make him sparkle.
Yeah, make him sparkle. Make him sparkle. Have a war between the vampires and put werewolves in the game.
There you go.
You could get, like, several books out of it.
I guess the TLDR is Redfall, if you want to sell a $30 DLC, maybe fix your shit and make the game interesting for the 3 players, and maybe get more players first. I don't know.
Yeah. Do that.
I just thought it was kind of funny that they are still selling a $30 DLC.
That nobody is going to buy because no one's playing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for the people who did, I am so sorry. I try to get your money back. It's not going to be worth it. We are indeed still in the spookiest of seasons, as you are aware. And in the last episode, we did a little adventure hook that you can use in adventure games, your TTRPGs, that was based around campfire ghost stories.
Also, if you haven't watched that one, go watch it.
Go watch it. Why, are you afraid? You afraid? You should be.
Afraid the ghosts are gonna get you.
They are.
They're gonna get you.
There's a guy with a hook, and he was a Scooby-Doo monster the whole time. Anyway, this week, though, I wanted to give you a different kind of adventure hook to expand upon, which is based on a movie. A movie you have not seen.
Yes, all movies that I have not seen.
You've never watched
not seen movies.
You've never watched a single movie. You're gonna be
Not a
that.
one.
You're gonna be that that meme, that famous tweet of guy who's only seen one movie, which was Boss Baby, seeing his second movie. I'm getting a lot of Boss Baby vibes here. You're gonna be that dude. Anyway, so the movie that I wanted to talk about was The Thing. Not the new prequel one that they did, but the John Carpenter one from back in the 80s. And I wanted to talk about that because I think that it has some really interesting framework, structure, that could be used for an adventure game. So let me just give you the basic concept of the movie. You have this team that is kind of cut off from civilization. They're at a research station. It's barren. There's no one else around, as far as they can see. There might be other research teams. You find out that there was one, but it's not easy to get around. Snowstorms come in frequently. Getting around and traveling is very hard. So you're at this research base, and it's a bunch of these guys, and they have dogs that they can use. A snow dog runs into the camp from the other camp. Doesn't really understand why, but we'll go and check that out later, I guess. But right now, let's put you in the kennel. As you start to realize throughout the course of the movie, this dog has been infected with essentially an alien parasite that can infest creatures and then take on their appearance. And there's very little way to understand how you are infected until it's too late. You might not even know you're infected.
Okay.
The movie goes through stages, basically, where the team is trying to, A, figure out how to identify what this alien virus is, where it came from, what it is, and then also how to determine who has it, and the mechanisms of determining if you are infected with the virus in the first place.
And what to do if you are infected?
And, that would likely be the third question they would have asked if they had time. By the end of the movie, to spoil a 40-year-old movie, but no one essentially makes it out of this.
Perfect.
just so
All
that you're
cool.
aware.
So what you're saying is our adventure hook is the party's gonna fucking die.
The party is going to essentially die. So here's what I wanted to set up. We'll take the general idea. It doesn't even have to be a snowy town, but that your party winds up at a small town that is just out in the middle of nowhere. There's no
Sure.
real major towns or any settlements or anything. It's just kind of out there in the boondocks. You're in the Wild West, practically.
Yeah, they're exploring and they come across a small town.
Right, exactly.
They're weeks away from anywhere worthwhile.
Exactly. And so they get into this town, and something just seems a little off. And they can't really pinpoint what it is. But some of the people in town seem like they're really on edge, like they're on guard, and they don't trust people coming into the town. They don't trust new faces, they don't know you, and they seem a little bit paranoid by the idea that you're there. And so the investigation is that some of the townspeople have encountered some sort of plague that they can't identify, and there's nobody in town that was an apothecary or an alchemist or anything that could research it, because they didn't think that this would ever happen. They don't know where it came from, they don't know how to figure out who even has it, because they can walk among you, and so they're now paranoid about this. And now you're a bunch of new faces, they don't know who you are, and they don't know if this plague has come from outside of town. They can only imagine that it did, and you might be from that place. And now you're highly equipped, very powerful adventurers that could do a lot more damage than your average citizen if you are infected with it. So you've now walked in essentially on a town that you can't just walk away from because it's a long trek out if you ever want to go anywhere, that is absolutely paranoid about it. And then there are also folks that are in the town who are probably like the town guards who also don't want you to leave. Because if you are infected with this plague, then you go to another town and you could spread it. So you're kind of locked in this place, having to deal with a paranoid citizenry that doesn't even understand what's going on, but knows that something is very, very wrong and has taken a lot of its citizens away. So now your party is in the middle of this. So, what do we do? What does our party have to do? I mean, I'm hoping that somebody has some healing ability here, or some knowledge of alchemy, but if...
Well, some knowledge of something.
Yeah, medicine or something.
They may not be able to heal it, but, having some knowledge of...
Medicine would be good.
Health, medicine, biology.
Biology would be good, and depending on how you want to flavor it, maybe arcane knowledge, or religion, or spirituality, or something. Because who knows what this could be? Even if it doesn't have anything to do with that, having people do checks that are related to that could be very useful because it pinpoints what it's not.
Yeah,
what it's not.
Well, it's not natural. Cool. It's not arcane. Cool.
Is it supernatural? Is it, is it a spore? Like, can we determine if this is a virus, a bacteria, mycelia? Can we figure out if this affects certain people, if it affects certain characteristics, if this affects animals? Can we determine anything like that? Any information would be useful. I think even just basic investigation skills might be useful. But, like, what's the first thing that you would imagine adventurers would do when faced with this situation? Your typical adventure party comes into this situation. What would you imagine would be some of the first moves that they would try to solve
murder?
this?
No.
Just kill everybody
Probably
off.
Investigation.
Yeah.
Probably some kind of investigation. Because you want to try and figure out symptoms or how to tell if someone's got it.
Yeah. I can tell you that it would probably be a smart idea to not have the answer to how to kill off this entity be fire, because they're just going to set the whole town on fire.
I mean, they're probably doing that anyways.
Yeah, that is probably the way that this resolves itself. But remember, you are trapped in this town.
Yeah.
Like,
I would want to have false leads as well. Maybe someone in town is sick, but it's not the virus. They've got a cold.
Yeah, absolutely. Or you have people that are like shut-ins. They don't want to go outside at all, and you think maybe it's because they actually have the plague to start with, but it's actually that they're just they don't want to get sick. They're trying to avoid everybody else, and they don't trust anybody else. So that's a misdirect that you can use. I like the idea that it could affect anything, like any biological entity.
It's affecting all the snails.
It's affecting the snails and the rats. I think that the rats would be interesting. I think it would be interesting if it affected the birds. If there's birds around town, because then that adds a whole new level of, like, how do we even contain this? I think that would be an interesting thing. If you find out that it can affect birds, do you then see all the townspeople shooting all the birds out of the sky because they're worried about, like, getting bird-demicked?
Birdemic.
Yeah. Worried
about all the bats.
Exactly. We're starting to make a trauma film now. This is great. That's great. I'm trying to think of other things that they might want to do. Like I said, this is a town, in my head at least, my headcanon, doesn't have, like, a healer or a medic or anything like that.
Yeah, assuming you've got, like, a cleric in the party, you could, like, purify food and drink and water and stuff like that.
Right, that might at least tell you if it's a foodborne illness or if it's a waterborne illness, something to that effect. So that could be helpful. But what would you want the actual culprit to be? This, like, in the thing, it was an alien entity, essentially, that had come to Earth. But
What do
in
I
this
want the
setting,
culprit to be? Clearly Mind Flayer tadpoles. We're going Baldur's Gate 3 on us.
Oh, okay, so we got Mind Flayer tadpoles in this. Okay, cool. So, what would the Mind Flayer tadpoles end up doing? Like, could you be a townsperson in this world and be infected with one of those Mind Flayer tadpoles, but not know it?
No, you know about that. We're not actually going to use that.
Okay, good.
I feel like it'd be maybe some spore, maybe
Spores.
as a culprit. I mean, you would probably kill with fire or burn part of the town down or something.
Always burn the town
do you like
down.
the witch trials? It's mold.
It's mold, yeah, absolutely.
mold.
Yeah, if you wanted to do something historically relevant, then mold would make sense. I feel like that's gonna become a more common framing for a lot of, like, even zombie fiction into the future, is to take, like, mycelia and, like, fungus spores, and to say that that's the culprit, because people, like, heard about the zombie fungus one time, and cordyceps, and was like, oh yeah, that's a good framing for it. In fact, that's what The Last of Us is based on.
I was going to say, that's what the whole Last of Us franchise is based on.
Yeah, exactly. So you could do that. The only thing is that it becomes pretty evident pretty quickly that you have that.
Yeah.
It doesn't take very long to figure out that that's the problem. So you would have to have something that's a little bit more subtle. And the interesting thing is, like, in the framing of the thing, sometimes the virus will then mutate your creatures if it's trying to infest other entities, but most of the time it's trying to keep under wraps and not reveal itself to stay hidden. But then,
so it's intelligent.
It has intelligence to it, yeah.
Okay.
Where it can understand where it is safe to be out. Well, I guess actually there are subtle ways that it can, infest people, but you don't see it. Like, that's the whole mystery of the whole thing, is that these two characters are alone in a room for a while, but you don't see what happens there. So it's possible one of them had the infection and then spread it, like, into the other person that had it. And so but we don't know what happened when those two people that weren't in frame are there, until everybody gets into the testing area and they sit everybody down and they try to figure out who's actually the bad guys. The way they do it in the movie, so that you know, is that they do a blood test.
Okay.
And so they take a little bit of the blood from every person and they put it onto a tray, and they find that, ironically enough, even though I said I didn't want to do this in our adventure hook, it doesn't like fire, which is probably the reason why it's in Antarctica.
So here's my question: if it doesn't like fire, blood, how do you use fire with blood? You just burn the blood samples?
What happened is that they had the blood on the petri dish and they put a torch near it, and if it exploded because it reacted badly to the thing, you knew that the alien was in it.
So here's the only problem with, like, a virus or something like that kills off its hosts in this manner, is that if all your hosts are dead,
you die too.
Doesn't the virus all die out?
Yeah, which is why the thing tries not to reveal itself, so that it has more opportunity to infest everybody else.
I guess the real question is, what's the end goal of this in the game? Like, what does this virus or organism intend to do?
It wants to multiply.
Sure,
like,
but there's
most
gotta be an end goal, because if it's not gonna affect me by having it, then...
it will take you over, because it's like it has to control, you have to do its bidding.
Okay, so it's just cordyceps, yeah.
It's essentially like that, but like an actual intelligent alien version or supernatural version of a cordyceps.
Okay.
In some way. I don't necessarily think that when you're talking about, like, plagues or viruses or anything like that, it has to have a real end goal to it. It just wants to survive as well as it possibly can. And so propagation inside of the entities that you have is the easiest way to do that. I did get the impression, and maybe this is something you'd want to use, is that it has a shelf life of how long it can stay inside of its hosts.
Okay.
Before the hosts die.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you'd want to do something with that in the game then.
Yeah, because it means that you have a constant hunger by the entity inside to try to get as far out as possible and keep reproducing over and over again. Before your hosts deteriorate and die. Out of curiosity, like I asked you on the last one, but is this the kind of thing that you'd want to subject your party to?
Maybe an altered version of it somehow, but like it really depends on what you're doing with the party. For a one shot, it could be really interesting because it's a deduction / not murder mystery, but a deduction mystery / oh no, we gotta cure the thing and we've only got like a week to do it, or else everybody in the town dies, or else it takes us all over and then we're unwilling, participants in this. For a one shot, that could be really cool. Campaign? Not really, maybe.
Yeah.
But given these are spooky adventure hooks, or kind of in that vein, one shots work pretty well for those, so.
Yeah, I think that it would be beneficial to not use established characters that you plan on playing long term, because I think it makes it more interesting for the players if they make a character specifically for this, and then realize that those characters are pretty expendable in terms of what's going to happen to them. That it's very likely that these characters are not making it out. So there is that. Biological, supernatural, magical. What kind of flavor do you want?
Probably supernatural is my guess. That's probably what I would use.
Yeah. So, like, do the thing, but maybe it's like a xenomorph, like an alien-style xenomorph. But
just something non-natural. It's got some kind of magical properties, but it's not. It's like, lycanthropy, supernatural, technically. Or it's at least a disease, but it's like a supernatural disease. So you can go along those types of things, I think.
Yeah, viral lycanthropy.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Taken orally twice a day.
Yeah, exactly. Ask your doctor if viral lycanthropy is for you. Hey, if anyone out there has any other suggestions about how you could utilize this in the game, or if you think that this is a good way to do a one-shot, let us know in the comments down below. Alex, it's getting close to the end of the month, and I'm starting to get real scared.
Oh, spook.
Yeah, I know. What am I gonna do? You know what? You know what I could do to ease my discontent? I could probably absorb some more Total Pebble Knockdown. But where could I go to find that?
You can go to our lovely YouTube page, which is probably YouTube/Total Pebble Knockdown or something. I don't know. Links down below. Or you could go to our wonderful website at totalpebbлекnockdown.com.
That's correct. It's like a bonfire in the middle of a void that wants to eat your face. You could also click on our Patreon banner, and you can find all of our extra content over there and early releases of our footage, in case you just can't wait to see our shining faces here. You can also find us on every podcast app known to mankind, and you can also find us on various social media networks, whatever the heck they're called these days. I am at Titanium.
I am at EXP Limited, and our show is at Pebble Knockdown.
So check us out over there for all of your pebbly needs, and keep coming along with us on this dark descent down to hell for the next couple weeks as we get even spookier. And sorry. Oh, sorry. I gotta get ready for this. Okay, you ready? On 3. 1, 2, 3. Boo! I probably should have told you what we were doing in 3, right?
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
Oh, well, next time.
Okay, on 3, we count to 3. How about that?
3.
3.
Done.
Done. Bye.
Bye.